My favorite film of the semester was Vertigo, and I'm going to analyze it through historical influences, the theme of the film, and the technique it uses to bring its main message to the audience. A relationship that can be established with the previous influences of the avant-garde is primarily with German Expressionism. The relationship is between the plot of The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Vertigo, because Francis' love for Jane and Scotty's love for Madeline is the same obsessive and seen through the male view, and in both it has to do with a detective trying to discover something. It's also about the male protagonist inventing things in his head that didn't exist, but the filmmakers manipulate the audience into thinking it was reality. But in the end, they are movies through the eyes of a man. Undoubtedly, surrealism is also cited by Hitchcock through the spirals that are in the credits of the film, but now also plays with colors to create almost like a psychedelic atmosphere, and its precursor is surrealism. Also, the dream that Scotty has surreal elements. In the late 50s, the second wave of feminism was also in the making, and obviously many thought Hitchcock was sexist because his film plays with a fine line between what appears to be sexist, but in reality the roles that have the upper hand are the female ones. Vertigo corresponds to the guilty woman plot, because Judy is a woman who participated or is a complicit in Madeline's murder, which makes her one of Hitchcock's typical blondes, who deserve to be punished, and as we have seen in all his films, the punishment depends on her level of transgression to the patriarchal system. In this case, we can see that the punishment is the death of the imposter and the torture of Judy's loss of identity, because in the film we see that Judy no longer wanted to become Madeline, so that Scotty would love her, but the obsession to have Madeline, to want to have a figure to protect and fulfill the hero part, Scotty forces her to become again. This is in accordance with the Hays Code, because according to it, people who represented corrupted moral values must die. But this is only one interpretation of the ending, because it could also be said that Judy preferred to die rather than live a life in which she must lose her identity in exchange for the love of a man. According to Robin Hood, in this form of plot there are two possibilities: that the main man of the film puts her back on the right path, or punishment, which is usually death. In this case, we have Scotty wanting to take his revenge on the people who made his ideal woman disappear, and so Good says, in Vertigo, we have little doubt that Scotty would rather have a dead Judy than a live one, if she really isn't or can be transformed into Madeline. This is also reinforced when we are in the scene of the sanitarium where Scotty was, because we see that Midge goes and takes care of him, but since the beginning of the film he doesn't love her. Instead, he prefers to love a dead woman than a live one, and he is not interested in anyone else until he finds his ideal woman, physically represented in Judy. We can also infer this from the close-ups in the film, because Hitchcock uses them to highlight something or someone that is going to be important to the development of the protagonist in the film. And here we have Kim Novak, with close-ups of her profile, which accentuates Scotty's voyeuristic position, but at the same time we know that this close-up serves us to interpret that she is the ideal woman for the protagonist, because all deserves to understand that she is an object of desire. This further reinforces the dynamics of the guilty woman plot, and we can say that Hitchcock highlights this position because we never see Judy with compassion. Hitchcock, being one of the masters of cinema and apprentice of silent films, believed that cinema did not need to dispense with dialogue to tell a story, and was perfecting this technique to make it more subtle, with more subtle touches to tell the story he was trying to communicate. In this film, the most notable technical aspects are the colors used by Hitchcock, green and red, and that manage to convey the love that one feels for the other, but above all to explain Scotty's obsession with Madeline. Through the scene where Madeline comes to life through the green color and the blurry filter, we can assume that she is a ghost returning to reality, and the green color was used to represent something supernatural. Also, the most famous effect in the movie, the vertigo effect, can symbolize his fear of heights, but also his fear of being alone, and that is why when he's in the church tower and we see that he looks down and he's afraid, it can symbolize another kind of fear of losing Madeline. Also, through the music we can see that the music is a spiral that turns around, or is a tonality that goes up and down, which represents that Vertigo is a cyclical film and that everything is repeated around the perspective of the protagonist to represent his obsession, and that is why the spiral in the bouquet in Madeline's hairstyle represents this feeling.